Some truths aren't learned. They're remembered, like a faint echo in the silence of your own heart, whispering what you've always known but forgotten under the weight of survival. There's a code, hidden not in books or strategies, but inside your own imagination. The same imagination you once used to play, to dream, to escape. But now, you are being called to use it not to flee, but to create. Because what if wealth doesn't begin in your bank account, but in the invisible realm where all reality is born? You've heard the phrase, imagination is the only reality, but have you ever let it enter you? Not just as an idea, but as a lived truth. Neville Goddard wasn't speaking metaphorically. He meant it, completely. In your inner world, you are already what the outer world has yet to catch up to. You don't chase wealth. You don't negotiate with the universe. You assume the posture of one who no longer doubts, of one who naturally generates, receives, and circulates abundance, because they are abundance. But perhaps there's a quiet war within you. One voice says, "You're powerful," but another older voice still whispers, "But not you, not really." You've watched the videos, read the books, practiced the affirmations, and still, something feels blocked. That something isn't your mind. It's your emotional body, still holding on to the vibration of unworthiness, still chasing money as if it's something out there, far away. But money, like every other manifestation, responds to the frequency of the one imagining. If the image is powerful but the vessel feels broken, the signal can't transmit. Dr. Joe Vitale explains this with piercing clarity. The law of attraction is only as effective as your ability to clear what resists it. Imagination is the instrument, but your subconscious is the hand holding it. If the hand is trembling with past wounds, inherited beliefs, or silent guilt, the music can't play. You might be visualizing freedom, but vibrating fear, wanting millions, but rehearsing scarcity, wanting to feel rich but secretly ashamed of desiring wealth at all. And so the question isn't, how do I imagine more? The real question is, what is preventing me from trusting my imagination as reality? Because you're not escaping the world when you visualize. You're rewriting it, quietly, from the inside out. You're not just picturing what might be. You're declaring what already is, in the invisible space where all things begin. Think of it this way. If your imagination is the software, your subconscious is the operating system. You can update the screen all you want, but if the core program still runs on fear, lack, or guilt, the system will crash. Every time. Alignment isn't just about seeing the new reality. It's about becoming the one who can hold it, who can breathe it, who can live it now. So take a breath. Feel your chest expand, not with pressure, but with permission. Permission to remember who you really are. The truth isn't far. It's already speaking through you, through the quiet pull toward something more, something real, something only you can see and only you can feel, until the world has no choice but to reflect it. Because your imagination is not an escape. It's a portal, and today you've begun walking through it. There is a silence inside you that still believes wealth is for someone else. Not because you truly think you're unworthy, but because a part of you was shaped in an environment where wealth was always just out of reach, like a window you could look through but never touch. That memory is not just psychological, it's vibrational. You may be setting goals with your mind, but your emotional body is still speaking the language of survival. Imagination does not operate in isolation. It runs on internal scripts, many of which you never consciously wrote. They were inherited in silence, absorbed in moments when money created conflict in the room, when joy felt conditional, when you watched your caregivers hustle, sacrifice, suppress, when you heard, "We can't afford that," repeated like a hymn. These aren't just memories, they became emotional blueprints, your operating system. And here's what no one tells you. Until you update that script, even your most beautiful imaginal scenes will crash under the weight of contradiction. Not because they're wrong, but because they're foreign to the system you're still running. You don't need better techniques. You don't need more content. You need to uninstall the scarcity software hiding in the basement of your nervous system. Most of us are trying to drive with the handbrake on, but it's worse than that. The subconscious, left unobserved, isn't the brake. It's the one holding the steering wheel. So while you visualize abundance, a deeper program quietly reroutes the GPS back to what feels normal. And if normal means barely enough, that's the reality your mind protects, even if your soul is ready for more. There's something sacred about noticing where your wealth story began. Not to relive it, but to reclaim it. Go back to those first moments where money had an emotional charge, where you felt envy, guilt, shame, or longing. Trace the origin. See it clearly. Not to judge it, but to release its grip. Because the moment you observe a pattern without attachment, you begin to dissolve it. This is not about blame. It's about awakening. Awakening to the truth that you are no longer the child watching others receive. You are no longer the one waiting. You are the one who chooses what gets downloaded into your inner reality. And you're allowed to choose again. Not from force, but from remembrance. The millionaire version of you isn't a fantasy. It's the default setting, beneath all the noise. Feel into that. Let that truth sit in your body. Because the one who assumes the identity of abundance doesn't wait for the world to change. They remember who they were before the world told them otherwise. And that remembrance is where wealth begins. There's a quiet ache that comes from seeing a beautiful life in your mind's eye and feeling disconnected from it in your chest. You close your eyes, picture the wealth, the peace, the freedom, but something inside still whispers, it's not really yours. That dissonance doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It means a deeper truth is trying to be heard. You cannot manifest what you do not feel safe embodying. This isn't about how vividly you visualize. It's about how deeply you believe the image belongs to you. The subconscious does not respond to fantasy. It responds to familiarity. And if wealth still feels like something you're pretending, your body will quietly reject the signal. It's not self-sabotage. It's self-protection. Your inner system is designed to keep you aligned with the identity you most believe is real. And if that identity still carries shame, unworthiness, or imposter energy, no amount of mental imagery will override it. This is where the Galatea effect comes into play. Not the belief others have about you, but the belief you hold about yourself. That internal image sets the ceiling for what you allow, what you receive, and what you unconsciously repel. You may say, I want to be rich, but if the emotional tone behind the statement is hollow, the frequency collapses. That's why you must enter the scene, not as a spectator but as a fully feeling being. It's not enough to see the mansion. You must feel the texture of the doorknob, smell the wood, hear the silence of peace, taste the luxury of space. Let wealth become sensory, because the body doesn't lie. And when the body begins to feel it, the mind stops fighting it. This is not a game of pretending. It's a practice of emotional immersion, of making the imagined world feel more real than the current one. You don't need to fake confidence. You need to familiarize your nervous system with a new normal. You need to walk through the imaginal house not as a visitor, but as the one who belongs there. So notice what arises when you try to feel that wealthy version of you. Is there tension? Doubt? A subtle pull back into the old frequency? Breathe into that. Not to resist it, but to melt it. The friction is not failure. It's your former identity meeting your future self at the doorway. And once the emotional walls begin to soften, something shifts. The image no longer feels like a dream. It begins to feel like memory, like something that's always been yours, just waiting to be felt deeply enough to surface. And that's when the external world begins to move. Not because you forced it, but because you finally stopped doubting the one imagining it. What dopamine has to do with financial sabotage? The dream feels exhilarating at first, alive, electric, full of possibility. But then something strange happens. You feel the spark, but not the follow-through. You visualize the wealth, feel the excitement, even get glimpses of what could be, and then you crash. Not because you're broken, but because your brain has been trained to seek novelty, not stability. This is the hidden chemistry behind spiritual fatigue, behind the high of vision and the low of inaction. Dopamine, the neurotransmitter of anticipation, rewards you for imagining. It gives you a thrill. But without anchoring that vision into embodied consistency, the thrill becomes your trap. You become addicted to glimpses of a new life, but allergic to the structure that sustains it. This is where so many spiritual seekers unknowingly sabotage themselves. They fall in love with the rush of inspiration, but never teach their nervous system how to hold the state. So the energy spikes and then disappears. They move from one idea to another, one method to the next, always chasing the next high, and wondering why nothing sticks. True manifestation doesn't live in the peaks. It's anchored in repetition. in the sacred monotony of returning again and again to the same vibration, until it becomes your home. Wealth doesn't respond to bursts. It responds to presence, to the energy of one who is no longer seeking, but settling into the reality they've already chosen. You can begin to shift this pattern by training your mind to find pleasure in the steady, in the quiet moments of progress, in the feeling of showing up even when the high has passed. Begin celebrating micro wins. Let your body register small shifts as victories. When you ground the energy of creation into your daily rhythm, you rewire the brain to trust the process, not just the payoff. Imagine your brain as a casino. Every time you visualize without structure, you're placing a bet on a vision. But the house always wins unless you change the game. The new game is not rush, it's reverence. You stop chasing jackpots and start tending to the soil, because the one who tends daily, with patience and devotion, is the one whose garden eventually overflows. This isn't punishment, it's preparation. Your nervous system must become familiar with holding the frequency of expansion, not just visiting it. And that means slowing down, not in action, but in intention. Not rushing toward the life you want, but becoming the one who no longer rushes at all, because they already feel the abundance, inside the stillness, inside the repetition, inside the moment they stop gambling with their dream and start living it. Before we move on, pause with me for just a moment. If something in you is shifting, if you're beginning to sense that the version of you who has it all isn't far but near, then you'll want to check the pinned comment below. There's something waiting there that speaks the same language your future self already lives by. Not more noise, just a subtle key. Go feel it, then come right back. The millionaire version of you already exists, but you're ignoring them. There is a version of you who already knows how to hold abundance without fear, who walks into rooms without shrinking, who receives without guilt, who moves through the world as one who remembers, not one who is trying to become. But that version often feels distant, foreign, as if they belong to another timeline, another life, and yet they are already here. This is not about becoming something new. It's about aligning with what already exists. In the quantum field, all versions of you are real now. The confident one, the wealthy one, the fulfilled one. They are not waiting in the future. They are broadcasting from within a frequency you haven't yet tuned into, not because you can't, but because part of you still finds safety in the struggle. We often avoid our future self not because we don't believe in them, but because they make us confront everything we must let go of to fully become them. The excuses, the habits, the identity that made lack feel familiar. So instead of merging with that version, we study them from a distance. We admire them, envy them, but rarely inhabit them. And yet, the invitation remains. You don't manifest that version of you. You meet them, in the mirror, in silence, in imagination. You close your eyes and instead of picturing outcomes, you feel into presence. What does it feel like to be the one who already is? What would they say when you doubt? How would they stand, breathe, respond? What would they no longer tolerate? Not from the world, but from themselves. This is not a fantasy. It's a frequency. And when you step into it, not with pressure, but with intimacy, you begin to remember that it was never about external validation. It was about internal permission. The moment you stop asking, "How do I become them?" and start whispering, "Thank you for being here," everything changes. You're tuning a radio. That's all. And the signal has always been playing. The millionaire version of you didn't need to be created. They needed to be recognized. Their voice is quieter than the noise of fear, but more steady, more grounded. And they are patient. They've been waiting for you to stop trying so hard to change and simply listen. And as you listen, you feel the subtle shift. Not dramatic, not loud, just real. A quiet confidence that wasn't there before. A knowing that doesn't ask for proof. And you realize you're not looking at your future. You're looking at your truth. And now it's no longer something to reach for. It's something you live, breathe, and embody. Moment by moment, choice by choice, breath by sacred breath. There's something almost magical that happens when you shift how you see yourself. Not in pieces, not in performance, but at the core. Because when the inner lens changes, everything it touches begins to rearrange itself. This isn't just spiritual theory. It's a psychological phenomenon. It's what researchers call the halo effect, where one powerful perception casts its glow over all areas of life. You've probably felt it before, even if you didn't name it. The moment you felt truly confident in one area, and suddenly people treated you differently everywhere. The way you carried yourself altered the way life responded. It's not a coincidence. The world mirrors back the energy of the identity you accept. And that identity isn't built by doing more. It's unlocked by remembering more deeply who you truly are. Many try to fix behavior. They hustle to change habits. They fight symptoms without addressing the root. But the root is always self-image. If you believe you are someone who struggles, even temporary success will feel like an accident. If you believe you're unworthy, even when money comes, you'll find ways to push it away. But when the identity shifts, when you truly become the one who is already worthy, already abundant, already safe, everything around you begins to follow. It's not magic, it's alignment. Your energy field organizes itself around your most consistent self-perception. So instead of constantly trying to fix what's not working, ask, who is the one I would be if I no longer needed to prove anything? What would I claim? Not from ego, but from remembrance. Begin with one shift, one inner truth you choose to embody fully. Maybe it's I am trusted, or I am safe to be seen, or I am a portal for abundance. Let that new identity take root. Let it infuse your voice, your posture, your decisions, not with force, with familiarity. Because the moment your inner world believes it, the outer world has no choice but to reflect it. It's like turning on a single beam of light in a dark room. Suddenly, everything looks different. Not because the room changed, but because the light changed. That's what happens when you elevate your self-image. The same life becomes a different life, simply because you are no longer living it from the same frequency. This is not about arrogance. It's about authenticity. It's about letting go of every borrowed belief and standing in the resonance of your real power. The kind of power that doesn't shout. It just is. Quiet, certain, radiant. And as that radiance expands, so does everything else. Not because you forced the world to change, but because you finally stopped dimming the one who was always meant to lead. There was a man who had talent, drive, and a clear vision. But still, the clients didn't come. He sent proposals. He built his website. He stayed up late perfecting his pitch. But every email that went unanswered felt like a quiet confirmation of a deeper belief he didn't know he was still carrying. Maybe I'm not the one people seek. It wasn't strategy that was broken. It was the story beneath the strategy. So he stopped. Not in defeat, but in decision. Each night, instead of planning more, he closed his eyes and rewrote the scene. Not by hoping, not by begging, but by feeling what it would be like to be fully booked, fully chosen, fully received. He imagined the inbox filled with confirmations. He heard the notifications. He saw his calendar overflowing with aligned opportunities, not as a fantasy, but as a return to the truth he had forgotten. And then it happened. Not all at once, but steadily, naturally. Emails began to arrive. Clients he hadn't spoken to in months suddenly reappeared. Projects flowed in with ease. But it wasn't the universe doing him a favor. It was resonance catching up with embodiment. He didn't become booked out because he worked harder. He became booked out because he stopped identifying as someone who needed to chase. In the imaginal world, he had already become the magnetic provider, the one clients felt drawn to without needing persuasion, the one who didn't beg for attention, but radiated clarity. And the outer world simply followed the blueprint he had quietly laid down in the unseen. You don't need to knock on more doors. You need to become the house people long to enter. That's what he did. Not by force, but by shifting where he placed his power, from the outer chase to the inner claim. This isn't about pretending something is true. It's about anchoring in the knowing that what you imagine, consistently, vividly, emotionally, is more than visual play. It is a spiritual instruction, a command whispered into the quantum fabric of reality. And when that command is rooted in identity, not desperation, reality has no choice but to comply. So he didn't wait to be chosen. He chose himself, and in doing so, became undeniable. Not because of credentials or marketing tricks, but because he stopped looking for evidence and started living the energy of someone who already had it. Not someday, but now. There's a silent belief that still haunts many on the spiritual path, a belief that says, if I desire wealth, I must be less pure. It's subtle, often unspoken, but it lives in the nervous system. It shows up in undercharging, in hesitation to promote, in discomfort around receiving. Not because the soul doesn't want abundance, but because the subconscious still associates money with loss of integrity. You've likely felt this conflict. The part of you that wants to serve, to uplift, to live aligned, and the part that pulls back, whispering, "But will they still trust me if I prosper?" This is not humility. It's inherited guilt. It's the result of a world that taught you to choose between material success and spiritual truth. But that dichotomy is a lie, a deeply conditioned illusion. Wealth does not corrupt. It amplifies. It reveals. It brings to light what is already within. If you carry peace, wealth will extend it. If you carry fear, wealth will expose it. But the energy itself is neutral. What gives it meaning is the state of the one receiving it. When you begin to see money not as metal or paper, but as condensed energy, as a form of stored intention, everything shifts. Money becomes an echo of your value in motion, not your worth, but the vibration of how deeply you've owned what you're here to give. Imagine it now. Income is light, flowing to you, not because you chased it, but because your field became strong enough to hold it. Not because you learned how to manipulate the algorithm, but because you remembered how to magnetize from the inside out. This shift isn't loud. It doesn't demand that you abandon your values. It requires that you embody them more fully, that you allow your inner alignment to expand into your financial reality without apology. Because the truth is, spiritual integrity includes abundance, not as luxury, but as liberation. You're not chasing gold. You're becoming it. You're remembering that the more resourced you are, the more your purpose can ripple. The more nourished your body is, the more your presence heals. The more grounded your prosperity becomes, the more others rise by your example. Not because you saved them, but because you stopped hiding your light. And when that shift lands, wealth no longer feels like something you have to justify. It becomes a byproduct of being in right relationship with yourself, with your mission, with the universe. And that relationship, rooted in reverence, not guilt, is the most spiritual thing of all. There's a voice inside you that speaks even when you're silent. It narrates your moments, comments on your choices, interprets your worth. And though no one hears it but you, it builds the world around you. This is the voice Neville Goddard spoke of, the inner speech that constructs your outer reality, moment by moment, word by invisible word. You may be taking action, setting intentions, crafting strategies, but if the voice underneath still whispers, "Not enough," that vibration overrides every conscious effort. Inner speech is not just background noise. It is the blueprint, and every thought you repeat, every quiet sentence you accept, becomes the foundation of what life reflects back. Many struggle not because they lack talent, effort, or even vision, but because their inner voice is quietly bankrupt. It speaks in tones of limitation. It assumes failure before success is even attempted. It rehearses disappointment like a well-known script. And so the income rises and falls, the clients come and go. The success never feels steady, because the voice inside is still preparing for collapse. But here's the truth most never hear. Your voice can be retrained, not forced, not faked, recalibrated, gently, intentionally, through presence, through repetition, through choosing a different inner sentence and letting that sentence take root. Over time, that root becomes identity, and identity shapes everything. What if, for the next 5 days, the first thing you heard in the morning wasn't your to-do list or your fear or your stress, but a clear, grounded statement like, "I am the source of abundance," or "Everything I touch expands in value," or even more simply, "It's safe to receive," spoken not once but as a ritual, a remembering. This isn't about reciting affirmations with gritted teeth. It's about tuning your nervous system to the voice of the one who already lives in alignment. It's about letting that inner speech become familiar, so familiar that the old voice begins to fade, not through resistance, but through lack of attention. Because if your inner voice is depleted, no outer wealth will ever feel stable. But when your inner speech becomes rich, when it speaks from certainty, ease, and grounded faith, then wealth doesn't just arrive, it stays, it grows. It multiplies through the field of self-trust you've been silently cultivating all along. And that is the true creation, not just of income, but of a reality that echoes the tone of your truest voice. A voice that no longer doubts, no longer pleads, no longer waits, a voice that knows, a voice that leads, a voice that creates simply by being believed. It's not hard to feel aligned in moments of clarity. The real challenge is holding that alignment when nothing seems to confirm it. Most don't fail because they can't reach the state. They struggle because they can't stay there. Not because they're weak, but because their emotional set point still gravitates towards scarcity. Your subconscious is always searching for the familiar. And unless abundance feels emotionally safe, any expansion will be followed by contraction. Not by punishment, but by protection. This is why vibrational consistency is not about emotional highs. It's about stabilizing expansion so your system doesn't reject it. You don't build this consistency through force. You build it through rhythm, through anchoring wealth as a felt familiarity, not just a peak moment. This means creating daily moments where your nervous system remembers the feeling of abundance, not by efforting, but by returning. Think of it like soil. You can't grow strong roots if the ground keeps shifting beneath you. And wealth, peace, and expansion, they need roots. So you become the one who doesn't chase the frequency, but who lives inside it, again and again. This is how you stop treating manifestation like an event and start experiencing it as an identity. One breath, one return, one grounded choice at a time. And the more familiar that state becomes, the more the world begins to mirror what you've finally stabilized within. There is a difference between wanting wealth and being the one who naturally holds it. Most focus on results. But those results are shadows, echoes of a deeper identity quietly generating them. If your inner world is unclear, the outer world reflects confusion. But when your self-concept is precise, grounded, and practiced, abundance begins to orbit you without resistance. This isn't theory, it's structure. And the structure is simple. Create, condition, carry, create the scene. Not as a hope, but as a memory. Each day, close your eyes and see yourself already living it. Feel the room, the tone of your voice, the peace in your body. Don't visualize for the future. Assume it now. Let the imaginal act become your current location, not your destination. Condition the state. Let your body associate this identity with safety. Emotion is what imprints. So anchor this version of you with rituals, breath, music, movement, anything that makes it feel real and sustainable. Repetition isn't boring. It's how the brain learns to trust. Carry the identity into your micro-decisions, not with pressure, but with presence. Ask, what would this version of me choose now? And then honor it, in how you speak, in what you say yes to, in what you release. This is how you become fluent in the language of wealth. It stops being something you translate, and becomes something you naturally speak. And once you speak it fluently, life doesn't just respond, it aligns, quietly, unmistakably, completely. Your imagination is your wealth account. Withdraw daily. There is a realm within you more real than anything you see. It does not follow logic. It doesn't wait for evidence. It responds only to assumption. This is the realm Neville Goddard lived from, where imagination is not just creative but causal, and within that space every desire already exists. If you can see it and feel it, you've already touched the substance of its manifestation. Not metaphorically, energetically. Imagination is not fantasy. It is instruction, a direct command to the quantum field. The moment you believe the image is yours, reality begins its quiet reorganization. But the bridge between inner and outer is not built through intensity. It's built through consistency, through choosing, each day, to remember that wealth is not something you wait for, it's something you carry. Joe Vitale reminds us, wealth doesn't come to you. It comes through you, but only after you've cleared the debris of disbelief. You don't need permission, not from the world, not from your past, not from your current reality. You need only one thing, to stop negotiating with your power, to stop waiting for signs and start living as if you are the sign, because you are. Every imaginal act is a deposit into your unseen account, and the ones who prosper most aren't the loudest or the luckiest. They're the ones who withdraw daily, who trust that the invisible always becomes visible when the feeling is stabilized long enough to take root. So the question is not, will it happen? The question is, am I ready to live as if it already has? Because the only thing between you and the version of you who already holds it all is the moment you finally decide to feel it as real, And when you do, you'll realize wealth was never far. It was simply waiting to be felt deeply enough to appear. Check the pinned comment. Something there is meant just for you.